So just to capture what we just discussed prior to recording by accident, so we're putting this on record. We just didn't press record. We just talked about, and we just held a vote, and we can just recap the vote that was just held to compensate for the administrative functions that Jeff and Kersten provide on these weekly meetings, to set an hourly rate, which will be determined over the coming week and such. But the overall agreement was that yes, we can capture those hours, set a rate, and essentially compensate those functions back from the coalition treasurer. And to that, it was requested that there be that function also added to the Scalability Plus weekly call, either in the form of Kersten or Jeff, so that minutes can be captured, miro boards created, etc., to add some administrative support, formal administrative support to that call. And there was a vote that was taken, and the 4 representatives, Jesse, Lucas, Guillaume, and myself, have agreed with allocating funds towards this. If there's anybody else who wants to add on that, I think go for it.
Much appreciated. So that's good. So the Scalability Plus work group, when is that? When are those continuous meetings? Because that's kind of, as I mentioned, we kind of need to balance this obviously with the times that Jeff and or I have.
There.
So
go for it. Yeah.
I was just gonna say these are on Tuesdays, and they are at 2 p.m. Eastern.
What is that in UTC?
+4
18.
Would that be 6 p.m.?
Sounds about right.
Yes, it would be 1600 UTC.
1600 UTC.
1600 UTC?
Sorry, 1800 UTC.
1800 UTC.
1800 UTC, 6 o'clock, my bad.
Okay, because that's then 2000 CET, which is my time zone, which might be difficult on Tuesdays. I think that recalling that.
I think you mentioned it before.
If I would be joining in that, it should be 1 hour earlier, because otherwise I will have a coalition with not coalition. I will have a parallel meeting, steering call meeting on TELOS. So that
problem with that, I think that time would conflict also with the I guess like 3.1 Mendel calls, and I think WEX also has their meetings at that time for their scalability group.
Possibly Jeff could do the meeting from 2 to 3:30 for the Scalability Plus. Jeff, would you be okay running kind of a one of these Kanban boards in a tool of your choice, whether it be one of the various tools, I can't remember them, Trello or GitHub projects or whatever. It would be hard to move that meeting, because that would mean we'd have to move the Mandel meeting, Kersten. I mean, if it was strongly that you join, we could move the Mandel meeting to a different day, which would then allow us to move it to that time. The other option is to have Jeff take over a Kanban board, which there's obviously you can use them in Mira and GitHub in Trello. So I think if we have about 10 people that go to the Mandel meeting, and we had just invited all the chain leads to that as well, so you can all see it. What are the thoughts? I mean, whatever the group thinks is better, we'll do.
Well, we also have another resource starting on the 23rd that potentially could take that on, no?
I don't think that's what she does, but that would be
okay.
That would be up to Jeff. I think he's referring to Alicia Jeff.
Correct. Yeah, I can take care of it for now. and we can figure out the long term where that settles.
I would invite, though, speaking of that Mandel call that occurs at 1 hour prior to that, so at 1 p.m. EDT, 1700 UTC, that call, I would encourage the other people in the coalition to join that call. It's specific to basically the repo, which is now shared ownership to the coalition, I guess, informally.
I've seen some acceptances coming. I know Guillaume has accepted it. I think some of the others have accepted it as well.
Is it a recurring call? It's
Yes.
weekly?
It wasn't. I mean, it was recurring up to the end of May. And now I realize I'd like to actually make it fully recurring because at the end of May, we should be launching into Jungle 4, 3.1. But as soon as that ends, I want to start planning 3.2. So it should be a weekly meeting. So I just need to send out an invitation to where this will just be a standing meeting. And again, if we need to move the time and stuff, I'm okay with that. And I did ask Kersten if he wanted to come to that meeting, and he felt that he didn't need to attend that one. But I did extend an offer to him as well.
We do have OCI that attends that meeting. So OCI is now on a rolling contract with the ENF, where they are tackling on a lot of the issues that are legacy issues in EOSIO. I think we are up to 2,350 or something like that. And we're just rolling them off one by one, alongside the other priorities and such. And so that's really is a benefit to everybody. So if other chains, even if it's just one representative, maybe more technical in nature of the other chains, there's definite value.
The only issue with that time slot is WAC's scalability calls that happen every other week are also at that time. And I know Lucas, Stan, myself are going to be like, I guess, every other week on that other call.
Just be every other week as well.
Maybe we can. Well, that could be that, or maybe Lucas. I don't know if you have any thoughts. If there's.
Well, maybe we can do our maybe we can stagger every 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, I'd like.
So that's a solution.
Every 2 weeks would actually be interesting because our steerco is bi-weekly. So if we would manage to do that any other week, and Jeff, you don't have the resource to join in that, we could find an agreement to do that. That should be possible on a bi-weekly basis.
So are you saying you would join you would only join the Mandel planning meetings every other week, or are you asking us not to run them every other week?
No. I might have missed. I was too late, probably. I was talking about the Scalability Plus, but the Scalability Plus is weekly, right? So I misunderstood that.
There are two Scalability Plus meetings. One that just have Lucas and Guillaume and Stan, and those are every other week, but they're at the time of the Mandel meeting. And then there's Scalability Plus that happens an hour later from the Mandel meeting every week.
I would suggest we keep holding the Mandel call weekly, and then the people who can attend every other week, that is still benefit and bonus on.
And we're also trying to track things in GitHub, and we'll get progressively better and better at that. I have created a GitHub project board. We're mostly going through the issues right now because we're trying to close them out to know what issues are going to go into the 3.1 release. We looked at the pull requests as well. So we're trying to kind of manage the issues in the pull requests, mostly in the Mandel repo. The other repos aren't getting a lot of activity in them, such as the CDT or the EOS VM and stuff like that, or contracts has a little bit in it. But okay, sounds like we've got an answer there.
Okay, good. So then that will be Jeff. You offered that to join in there and support that. Okay. Good. We had a meeting this week. Jeff, Ted, and I. Actually, Jeff and I met twice to discuss about templates and the way we would report on the actual portfolio, which is the combination of all programs. and the programs and the projects inside the programs. So maybe we can pick this up as an agenda point. Jeff, would you like to maybe share your screen to show those documents, because they're obviously made by you, so it's all the credit to you.
Or blame, but yeah, sure. All right. All right, so what we'll go over real quick is going to be really lightweight, because as we know, we've got a lot of RFPs on the horizon, but all of these are going to turn into projects. And so what Kersten and I discussed is, first of all, this quick overview scorecard. I'm sure most of you have seen this. We grouped the projects into their program components. In other words, API Plus is a program that currently has 4 projects that are going to be in various states. In this case, transaction lifecycle is a project that's actually almost done. That's OCI has been working on that. But the other 3 projects are still in the RFP development phase. Looking at this, what we will do is, in a gray color, we will project out planned schedules once the project starts. And, depending on the team, some teams will have internal project managers who can do that on their own. In other cases, Kersten or myself or maybe an external project manager can assist with that, but come up with a schedule that has appropriate milestones that we can check the progress of and report back. Now, each program will kind of have a breakdown of, these are pretty standard areas to evaluate across a program. Kersten and I went through this for the API program. And really, the intent for this call is not a steering committee for every project and program out there. That's what the working group meetings would be for. But this is, we're reporting status back to you. And if there's any major issues that would delay anything across getting the benefits out for these programs, that would show up on this screen. So for example, in this one, your eye might immediately be drawn to the red down in resources. We've got 4 planned projects, and 3 of them we still need to get contracts out. So we don't even have the resources identified. I wouldn't say that that's unsurprising, or it's not surprising to us, but it is still worth calling out, because if one of these RFP cycles drags on, we're going to see this is going to be red every time we bring this up to this group.
What does ARP team mean? Is that faster finality?
So ARP, no, that's the it's essentially the research, the
API research platform, ACI research platform. But that, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was, I believe, the first proposal in the API Plus paper.
Right. And then in this deck, which, we'll share, but the projects will all have a status report. We've kind of talked about this before. This meeting that we're in now is not the appropriate time for us to be going through each of these unless a specific question comes up at the program level that we need to dive down. The reason why is because every project has its own status report meetings that myself or Kersten or another project manager will be working through to make sure dates are on schedule. And then again, every group, in this case API, would have a steering committee that would oversee to make sure that any of the issues can have tactical solutions to get things back on track. But this is really kind of the deck. We start at the highest level here, and then we can go into each program level 9 box if needed. And then if we really need to, we can go into the project level, below that. So all of the information is built off tactical, up to strategic. But So maybe we should pause, see if there's any questions, or Kersten, if there's anything you want to add before we open that up.
No, I don't think there's much to add, but I think we did discuss about tooling. So which tools are we going to use? And the conclusion that we took was that using like very easy Excel files will probably be most appropriate to manage this at this point of time, because it allows us to kind of aggregate the different programs and projects inside that in one sheet that's easy for everybody to work on. So you don't have to work with software licenses and everything. And it is also a case that most of the project teams will have their own tools they're working with, and they will obviously use GitHub with a lot of its functionality. So we decided against a solution like Jira, Trello, what have you, to manage these kind of things. While it would be nice to have like a burn down chart and all those nice statistics, we think that's at this point of time is overdone to do this. And with this kind of reporting, we should be well aligned to kind of manage those projects as they flow in. It's obviously a key point there will be the project management resources, which we think we might still need some additional capacity to manage this at some point of time. And obviously there is one person joining ENF, as far as I hear, finally a lady, wonderful. And we are at TELOS, we are in progress to hire a product manager, so that role could possibly also take some of that responsibility if required. But I would think that there might be some bottlenecks within the project and program management for those big programs. So that's kind of the point. But as a tool, I love this. It's easy to handle. It's easy to manage. Everybody has Excel or Google Sheets, so there's no hurdle for anybody not to be able to kind of see this, read this, or participate in those slides.
And to add to that, the teams that are actually working, whether they be, the API lifecycle under OCI, happen to do everything in Jira, and that's great. But they already have sheets like Jeff showed. Jeff showed their actual sheet. So this is a process that we've been working, because we found with the working groups that are working with the ENF today, they're using Notion, they're using Trello, they're using Asana and Monday, and if you've ever heard of the tool, they're using it, and there was no way to convince everyone, oh, here, if you're going to work at the ENF or you're going to work with the F-Force Consortium, you have to move to this tool. And instead we just said, look, well, use your tool, do what you really feel most comfortable with, but just give this update sheet. So I think that we've found that it has worked nicely, and it is nice that it's just Google Sheets and everything. I did have we also have a product person starting May 31st. So that person can also help as well. That was already our intention, that they'd help, write some of these RFPs, et cetera. But this is the biggest area, and we would probably have them start to come in and work on this. The last question I had, Jeff, was you had mentioned that things would be under the working group, and my understanding is the working groups have kind of eased back now. And so, Yves, do you still see like the API working group or the Core Plus is not really in there? If you notice, it had one item, and that was contract pays that we'll pull aside. But API and wallet and audit, if there were things that were going a little bit astray, would those working groups still be doing that, or what would we use as that? I thought you had mentioned that to me before.
The way that I see it, so those working groups have since set it. We could go back to the original authors and ask, but essentially their job has been done. The compensation that they received has already gone out, and so if we wanted to re-engage, then we would need to engage in a new contractor. I don't really see much value in doing that at this stage. I would rather see within the coalition people that are interested in these particular subjects kind of taking on the oversight committee, like Jeff mentioned, of, hey, I'm interested in in the API items priorities, I'll just join that and kind of fulfill that oversight function within that group, so that when we go back in this call, there are a few people that can speak to those items and speak to the progress. And I really like this. There's a few things that I really like about what's being presented right now. One is that there was no overcomplication of leveraging other tools and such. We are still so small as an organization, like talking about having licenses and using particular software. Just use the free stuff. And we have so few items to tackle on anyways right now. I'm really happy you guys went in that direction. I also like that this, as a function, is so useful for the group, because we've now put monies in a treasury, and we're going to be deploying those monies and those funds towards particular priorities. We'll be assigning them to particular teams, and this function will come and help the group without necessarily being involved in the day-to-day, keep track of where those monies are going, keep track of how to communicate to our respective communities what's going on, ensure an oversight function, but also more importantly, give additional resources outside of financial support in terms of project management support, like you just mentioned, Jeff. The resources that we've seen historically are what's lacking in a lot of teams. So they've got the technical capacity, but they don't necessarily have that strong of a project management capacity. Now, having the coalition provide that on top of that, I think in a way comes and mitigates some of the risks of potentially deploying capital that will be lost, or that won't be used as well, simply because, not because the team can't do it, but they just need a little extra support. And then kind of closes the loop as well for the accountability, so that the rest of the group knows where those funds are going, what's the status on that particular file at a very high level. It doesn't need to go down in weeds because somebody else is doing down the weeds with the project team. I think this is really, really great. I'm really happy to see this.
Yeah, I like it too. I can echo a lot of that. I'm sorry I missed last week's call, but I had encouraged everyone to sort of keep it simple, stupid, and not overdo it, and remember that the people we have in charge of each of these things are going to be people who are very competent, who get things done. I think none of us would be here if we didn't do that. So nobody needs a lot of hand holding. And I think this is a great way to do it. I saw, I don't think we should, be dictating things, just as everybody agreed. And this lets us move forward. And then, yeah, Yves, to your point, I think that we have all probably seen as many technical projects, go astray from lack of proper program management and project management as from like pure technical stuff. So maybe even more. So I think it's a great framework, and I just encourage us to move forward. Like, good, well done, everybody. This is awesome. Let's move forward with this, and keep getting stuff done.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well done, Jeff. We just talked about it.
So I think a final thing, since we like the scorecard, the one thing that I would say that actually is relevant for this week is the reason why a lot of these are yellow is we've discussed it before, but we do have a bottleneck in actually processing and developing the RFPs. So I am not convinced at this point in time that we're going to have all of these done by the end of the month. We're working obviously as fast as we can. I would encourage the people who are involved with the RFPs to respond on the group chats as quickly as possible, so we minimize delays in the commenting and voting and so forth. The 5 that are marked green, I have a much higher confidence that we will have the RFPs complete and out for bid by the end of the month, assuming, of course, that the RFP gets, upvoted by the 4 chains. But since the people writing the RFPs are all from the 4 chains, I feel that's a pretty good odds there. So, all right. And with that, Kersten, I'll turn it back over to you.
Actually, Aaron's not from one of the 4 chains. He actually works on a bunch of them, and he's writing the wallet stuff, but he's an honorary member.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's on all of them. That's
Yeah,
He's the only
absolutely.
representative from the EOS ENF board. So actually, he's our common boss, Ted and Jeff.
Everything.
He's everything.
I keep feeling so bad for him this week, with all the negative mentions of Anchor. You know, like Anchor. It's not Anchor Wallet. It's not Anchor Wallet. Unfortunately named.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of unfortunate things about that one. So,
Indeed.
yeah. 0.01 and on end chain on stop. So that's it. That's it, Luna. So there we are again. You should see the screen again. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Good. So one thing that we also discussed, because this is obviously the technical and the project management perspective, and what I showed to Jeff was the approach that we recently took on TELOS to kind of give a more like easy, digestible snapshot of what's been working on. That's like the core development updates that we issue on a bi-weekly basis. So, and we do split those into kind of 2 pieces that would actually, Brendan would probably love to see those things, is having like a status report by each program or project, depending on how detailed we want to be. I think for the initial part, obviously the program level would be interesting, having like a brief description of the top 5, 6, 7 items, short, a little icon next to it. So we choose like done, progress, untouched, new requirement, delay. Obviously no delays at all. So and then have that as the status with some comments, which would be like external communication. So this is the part that we communicate also to the community and to our teams. But then we have like an additional part that is more detailed, that explains the teams, like what exactly have been working on, what are the tasks and challenges. So it's more like a part of that reporting, but it's kind of easy digestible and easy to push out to people. And the proposal that Jeff and I would like to make is kind of use this kind of template in a different way and have that as an external communication element with some really easy digestible information. So we would like to hear if you second that opinion.
Let me say one thing to add a little more color to this. So we believe one of the biggest challenges in general with program management is correct communication. A lot of times, a lot of great work goes on, but if the right people are not getting information, that creates a lot of problems. In a normal centralized organization, you would say, all right, are we communicating with the executive tier frequently enough? Are we communicating with the steering committee frequently enough? Are we communicating with individual contributors? And then the outside world is normally handled by, some marketing communications team if necessary. In our distributed world, it's a little bit, it's actually a lot of bit different by design. And so we were trying to make sure that we are communicating appropriately the same information. But we also realized that something like a 9-box or a project status report, that's like too heavy-handed for people who are not in the midst trying to solve the problem. And so that really was the context. And Kersten pulled this up, and that's I think what we're proposing is, can we use this to say, all right, we will work with the communications people to make sure the information is right, but the communications people could use this on some sort of frequency to make sure that we as a whole are communicating what's going on with wallet, what's going on with scalability, what's going on with API, that scenario.
So do you make this template that Kersten showed and it's given to Zach and Brandon, or do Zach and Brandon scrape the 9 boxes and write those?
I would suggest Zach and Brandon own it and populate it, but it's like a communication. Like we could probably even set up like a half an hour meeting so that we're talking through it, because, you know, Brandon and Zach, they're going to be able to write things in a much more palatable way. You don't ever want me writing communication that, like, I'm the most boring person to read, right? So
just the facts.
Just the facts, man.
So in terms of, you said scraping that information from somewhere. Well, what I'd recently started was a different Telegram group so that I have representatives from each of the different coalition member chains in there that are kind of the communication, you know, lead, for lack of any specific person that might be able to fill that role. And I thought it'd be better to have the individual teams kind of communicating what they want highlighted and that they've contributed to, what those things are. So this could fit into that. I'm just wondering, like, how the information gets, like, do we go to the information and retrieve it and stick it in here, or can we do something where, because the teams know best what they're up to. And so from my vantage point, it seems like if they could populate something like this with, you know, like a bulleted list of the stuff that they've been working on over the past cycle, and then we could grab that and pop it into our, you know, biweekly communications, that would be awesome. But I'm not sure if I'm understanding what you're proposing.
So my initial thought is we're already asking the teams to do a lot anyway, and I've noticed that with the RFP process. I mean, if you think about it, the RFP itself is like, once we're done with this, we could give you money. And even that is like getting lost because there's so much work going on. But our project management hats, we're already collating a lot of this information through the status report up to the program level. I think it might be like pretty easy if, like, we just have like a weekly meeting with you. I mean, it could be you and I to and I can just go through stuff, and then you can say, okay, that looks good, this looks good, and try it. And if we find ways to improve it, you know, let's just do it and see what works, right? And then we can improve it as we go along.
I think the meeting sounds good. That way, you know, Kersten and Jeff can bring the 9 box to you that's got everything in it, plus the scorecard, right? And they bring that to you. And then you've got that template knowing you're going to try to make pros out of it. And they're showing you, like, this is what's going on this one. And you're writing that in a more palatable form that would be publicized in a report or something. But they know what all that is. That way, instead of you scraping it without context, meaning you read the 9 box and write the other one, you guys jointly kind of discuss it so that you can ask questions.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm all about that.
Yeah, makes sense. What I tend to do is ask the people that are working on this to give me like 5 bullet points just on Telegram or Teams or wherever, and then just bullets, and then I will rephrase them and put them into the document. So, but having that giving to Brandon and Zach would obviously relieve the people that are doing the actual programming work of doing yet another document. It's like if we would ask Aaron to also give this to us, he would probably get crazy because he then wrote it 5 times.
Yeah, avoid asking Aaron for anything else at all costs if possible.
Yes. So I think that process makes sense and kind of doesn't put like additional redundant pressure on the people that should actually do the program work. So I think that's a good way to do it.
I love it.
I'll prepare. I'll hand over the template to you, Brandon, or maybe we can look at that it's a little bit complex to maintain, so probably we find a different way to make it a little easier.
Yeah, I can work with that template if it's whatever format, doesn't really matter, so long as we have a good process. And then we'll work on a weekly or bi-weekly meeting, or how do you want to do that, Jeff, Kersten?
The question is, how often do you think we need to publish information to keep people informed? I wouldn't make it more than 2 weeks, definitely not. But is weekly too much, or is weekly the right amount? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, we've been on the bi-weekly pace so far, and with what I've been able to pull out, bi-weekly works really well. But if the volume of information starts to get, like there's that much more information because we're better at getting it, then maybe a weekly would be better. But I'd say for now, let's just stick with the bi-weekly and see if we if it ends up.
How often do you do EOS everything? Is that once a week?
Everything
different thing though. Yeah, one of them is every week, but the one for the coalition is every 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, we've been trying.
I would propose bi-weekly, because the worst thing we can do is kind of send out one thing every week, because we have to send it every week, and it's not much movement in those files. It kind of, if you compare them and it's always the same topics, then people won't read it anymore. So I would propose to go on a bi-weekly or bi-weekly schedule.
Yeah, I think
bi-weekly is probably good. Twice a month is probably fine for the foreseeable future, in my view.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, I'll just connect with you guys and we'll make sure we have that process working. So we published today, so it's going to be 2 weeks from today is the next outgoing sort of communication.
So from that perspective, it would actually be great, obviously, to have the first bi-weekly update in that, or announce it and have it attached, maybe. Does that make sense? Or would that be an intricate, a part of your communication would be the bi-weekly update, or is that the bi-weekly update? So you wouldn't add anything to that?
I mean, we've already been doing the bi-weekly update, like the EOSIO Coalition report has come out twice now. And
yeah, I know.
So the third one could just kind of repackage whatever additional content into the same format, unless you're suggesting we do like a whole new thing.
So yeah, that's the question. So if you would kind of maintain the current communication, and then we add this bi-weekly development update that we just discussed, or would you integrate that into the bi-weekly thing that you do anyway?
I think just integrate it together personally.
Okay.
There's no sense in having two separate. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. And maybe this group will become less relevant with this process, but I'll go ahead and just invite you, Jeff, and Kersten to that Telegram group so we can talk external comms there.
Yes. Sounds good. Okay, going to the in progress items. This one we already discussed. Wallet Plus SDK RFP document, Aaron, supposed to be due for today, but knowing how much things you have to do, I wonder what the progress is.
Aaron, do you want me to take that?
Sure. Yeah.
It's basically done, but we are waiting for all of the members inside the Wallet Plus group, to essentially vote on it, thumbs up. From Aaron's point of view, he's already given multiple layers of feedback. It's all in there. And I believe everything from Aaron's point of view is good to go. So we're looking for additional confirmation. If I get that today, that could potentially be ready to be voted on and released by Monday as an RFP. But we do have to think about where we're going to release it to.
And I think on my confirmation of that is the combination of everybody from Gray Mass's feedback on that. I've been collecting internally and kind of applying it just from myself. So on the Wallet Plus side, the only other person would have been Rami, and we'll see if he responds.
Okay. I'll do a targeted message to him then too.
Sure.
So do we give a deadline if he does not respond?
I did not.
No, I mean that's why I'm asking. Should we then give a deadline so that we give a period of time, and if he doesn't respond, then that response is the response essentially?
Yeah, for initial response, certainly, right? Like, I know he's pretty busy right now, but yeah, like we can't just wait forever. But
and this is only to present the RFP to this group.
Sorry, say again.
It's only to present the RFP to this group.
Right. Right.
Because then the exercise of reviewing the RFP is still going to be undertaken by this group. So it's not going out in the wild. Then once this group, the coalition, approves of that RFP, then it goes out into the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. So so I don't, therefore, there's not really much reason to wait forever. Even if we somehow jump the gun, he could still come back and present to us. So I just say, if we haven't heard from him, I happen to know, that, or happen to believe that I've seen he's pretty busy right now, just in our own personal conversations. So I don't think we need to wait. He'll get back to us if he needs to. My guess is that it just adds time of waiting for us instead of actually, moving forward. I'd rather see us just keep moving forward. If he goes, oh, whoa, wait a minute, guys, I'm sure we'll let him have whatever say he, is reasonable.
Yeah, and I wouldn't anticipate that either. Like,
just for context, it's been a week as well.
Yeah.
The RFP was first shared in the Wallet Plus group on May 6th.
Yeah.
So
okay.
the one thing we do need to, I'd like some guidelines is once the working group says, great, RFP looks good, go present it. How would you guys like me to do that? Would you like me to just post it into the Telegraph channel? Do you want it formally presented in this meeting kind of thing? And I'm not just talking about this one. I'm talking about all of them as they're ready to be reviewed at this level.
I would prefer that they're posted in the channel because they're quite hefty. And so presenting them here, I don't think will give ample time for people to review. So I would rather we post in advance and then we can vote as to whether or not it's ready in this group after people have had time to review. And likewise, once we're ready to review the bids, we review the bids prior to the meeting. So all the work happens outside of this meeting, and really the questions and final voting happens in this meeting. That'd be my opinion.
Okay, so Kersten, I can say an agenda item for next week, we'll be voting on the SDK RFP. Because whether I post it now or 24 hours from now, that should still be enough time for everybody to review and answer questions on Telegraph.
Seems like it.
Yep. Okay, let's move these over here so we don't get confused next time. Okay, so that's that point. Yeah. So what you probably just recognized is that I added another board here because as I mentioned last time, I was getting more and more confused with all the comments about various blue papers and executive summaries and RFP documents. So I created a new one for this one here and separated it by the different programs and added like different statuses like it's actually blue paper, like review of blue paper, approval of blue paper. Obviously, those are all in that state except the ad hoc items. Then we have like the creation of the executive summaries, the RFP creation, RFP review presentation, approval, and then move into vendor selection, contract negotiation, and approval. Obviously, we can add some more status columns here if we want to, but that's the columns that I could imagine when I created this earlier today. So if that's fine for you, then we can move on with that way of displaying it because I find it more intuitive to kind of navigate through that and visualize the status for all of the different items.
Sure.
Yep. Good. Cool.
Makes sense to me.
Okay, so I just guess that support for supported letters. Because we moved this over to the other board, I will put this as done. The prior top 20 items list, I haven't been able to kind of work through that to look at the different statuses. I will do that afterwards then and amend that here. So in regard of the items 5 and 10, Guillaume, is there anything you've been able to kind of finalize on those?
Just give me 1 sec. I don't think so. I've not been working on additional items per se.
I thought that we agreed to shelve those, essentially seeing as they were priority number 19 and 20. And we have a long list of other priorities to turn into RFPs well before that anyways. So essentially this would be kind of on hold until the others are taken care of.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, like in general, because originally we said that the I guess like the coalition would probably tackle, we have these 20 priority items, but we said it's probably realistic to think we'll tackle, I think we said between 5 and 8 in the first year. I think like that was Ted's comment, and I agree. So it makes sense to kind of like, I guess, progress a little bit more. A lot, like the ones that are at the top of the list, and we don't have to work on the ones that are at the bottom too much. So that's why we were kind of working more on the top ones and less on the bottom ones.
Okay, then maybe what makes sense, because this is kind of it's probably beneficial if we just go through those from top to bottom and then state where they are currently, because I think then we have most of that covered, and are sure that we all have the same understanding. So we discussed the SDKs right now. So for application registry, that's obviously in the blue paper. Has there been anything else being done, like executive summary, or is the RFP document in progress for this?
Can I jump in for a sec? Because I have all of these statuses for all of them on the blue paper voting sheet. And like, so we don't necessarily have to do this now. We can go look at that, because I have the different states. Some of them are, I even have like bidding states and so forth. So I have all 22 of them actually identified. So, I mean, we can put it in the Miro board too, because it's just a graphical way of looking at it. But you and I can do that offline, I think.
Yeah, then let's do this. Then we don't have to kind of repeat that over and over again. And we prepare that for the next meeting in our regular call anyway.
Yeah,
okay.
Sounds good.
Take that test. So is there any
Lucas, by the way? So Lucas had to drop as he usually has to leave at 3:00 Eastern.
Okay, so he did state in chat that blue paper for Scalability Plus group, I have now a proposed outline and a copy of Yield Plus blue paper that I will be using as an example to develop Scalability Plus. One should be making more progress over the next week. So this is what is written in chat. So we have that update. So in regard of the other items, is there anything that you would like to share where we have been progressing? Obviously, everybody's waiting for the brand development, but Justin, unfortunately, is having COVID and it doesn't feel well.
That's okay. I'm here. I can talk about it.
So maybe
Aaron and Yves are both on that too, but I'm happy to give a quick update. It's going very well. Yep. We have gone through an exhaustive, occasionally exhausting process of branding, but I think it's quite good. This last week we looked at four visual approaches that we seem to choose. All of us on that seem to have very similar responses to one of the four, and they'll be getting us some information back on that. The prior week we spoke about name types, not a list of names, but the accomplishments that we're trying to do with names. And we came up with some really good stuff, I think. And so I think we are waiting just for the brand firm to come back to us with both of those things, and that we are moving quickly. I think we're probably, what do you think, Yves, like 3 weeks or less from being able to present something to this group?
I believe so. I believe now that we're waiting on the studio to get back to us with the final 3 type of thing, based on the 2 last calls that we've had. And I would imagine that we'll get that next week. And then from there, we'll probably provide some feedback, then maybe go back at it maybe once more. So we'd be presenting, I think, maybe the next 3 weeks or so to this group. That seems accurate.
I would say that we will get, I would expect we'd get a shorter list of actual name prospects, but more than 3. Hopefully, and that we would want to be narrowing down, or there were some things that they were going to look at. They wanted to make sure that we generally liked that before they did their full, level 1, level 2 sort of trademark search and whatnot. so they don't end up doing that on on everything. But that's kind of why I thought 3 weeks. I thought they'd get back to us something this week-ish. We get them feedback. They'd come back with something a little more dialed in, and then either that or one more meeting would get us to what we would be presenting. We would all be presenting to this group.
And historically, they do present things on Friday, so it wouldn't surprise me that we get something tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be great. I think this is, we may be off by a week in either way, but I would say 3 weeks plus, I think we're still very much on track for 3 weeks plus or minus for this group to be making, be hearing what we've come, what the work group has put together. So I think that's at least reasonable. I don't think it's going to be too far. It's not going to happen this week, and it's not going to happen in 6 weeks. So that's my guess.
Okay, sounds great. Brandon, you want to give a short update on communication? I mean, we talked about the newsletter that's been sent out today. So is there anything else you'd like to share?
Not especially, no. I think we covered it, and we'll just circle back, and I think when we have some more noteworthy things to report, we'll get that Twitter Spaces scheduled. That's the only other thing that needs to be kind of coordinated, but yeah, nothing really pressing.
Okay, so I'll close it so we don't talk about it every time, and that's fine for you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, so Jeff and I and Ted had the discussions about the templates. That's done. We did have an update from Lucas about the Scalability Plus thing. Is there any new feedback in regard of the actual RFP bids from the ones that you've talked to, Yves?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I believe this is new. I think it's after last Thursday. I mentioned that in the Audit Plus group that Slowmist had declined to bid, and that Sentinel had shown interest in bidding in the 2 items that were selected by this group. Since then, Sentinel has informed that they will not be bidding as they don't have the capacity. And therefore, the Audit Plus items that were selected in this group will all be going to open tender by default. And Jeff, I believe that's already in I believe Jeff already has captured that in the other report, and as mentioned in one of the other items that he'd be informing you offline of to update the to the right board, to the right of my screen.
Can I ask a question, Yves?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, another one, because the first one was a question, I guess. So question number, thank you. Thanks for the answer. Question number 2 is, when we were going primarily to the authors of the blue papers, there was not really much reason to worry about quality. But now that we're going to open tender, audit is a great example of not just anyone can do it, and even some people who have good, to be honest, even some people have companies that have good or well-known names, especially in auditing, are not, in my view, not actually very good, not good enough to be worth paying for. So I guess my question is, have we thought about how are we going to, what's our process going to be for determining sort of a minimum required, quality on some of these things? I'd hate to have somebody put together a big, a proposal, and then, especially if there's not very many proposals, and then for us to go, you know what, thanks, but you're not good enough. And I even more not want to see us have have very few come in and say, well, these are the three that we've got to choose from if none of them are good enough, because there's a lot of things we do that require technical excellence or nothing. We might as well not spend money on it. So have we thought about that, or has anybody talked about that, or what do people think about how we dictate a certain level of technical excellence? And what if we can't find those, how are we gonna decide whether to, go with those who have made a tender, versus determining, if something is so important that we can't just give it to anybody. It's kind of a concern I see coming up, and based on what you were talking about, and well, I figure I'd probably explained it to death. So
there's a little bit, but no, I think I understand what you're saying. Jeff, do you want to? I'm going to actually answer probably similarly to what you're going to answer. So maybe Jeff, you can start, and then I can add to it.
Yeah. So first, as a baseline, the RFP template clearly states that the coalition is not required to pick anybody for a solution. So if we get 3 back and the coalition decides that none of the 3 are good enough, we stated up front, we might say, you know what, we're not doing any of this. So from that point of view, we're safe. But then it becomes the process of, all right, how do we decide what is good enough? Now, there's a big scale, right? You were talking earlier, I think we all agree that we don't want to overcomplicate processes that we don't have to. And so for the ones right now that we're just trying to get out, we have to the authors, we haven't focused as much on that. But really what we should be doing for the ones we are going to have complete strangers is we should be looking at every requirement. We should take the time to weight the requirements, because not all requirements are equal. They could really nail the important one and not get a low-hanging, or an unimportant one, or vice versa. And then kind of decide that we're going to go through these, looking at each requirement separately to evaluate as cleanly as possible. In terms of the technical evaluation, it's a little bit like grant review in the sense that we need technical people to look at the potential solution to determine if it meets a minimum threshold. Am I getting it anywhere near the answer or the question you were asking, or am I going a little?
Oh yeah, no. That's yeah. I didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah, I think you're definitely in the zone. Again, I'm bringing it up now, trying to bring it up a little bit early, because we don't need to have a solid answer for it, but I do see it becoming something that we want to start thinking about a process around. And what you described there, it sounds like a good beginning for process. There's some dangers on all sides. Like, we don't want, if it's a small community, we don't want the people to put a lot of time into proposals that we're ultimately going to say, well, you're not good enough for this, because there might be something else that they're perfectly good enough for, and we don't want to alienate them so that our small community doesn't make proposals. So we don't want them wasting our time or their time. But yeah, but we also don't want bad people doing stuff. So I think what you propose is the right way to begin. And more than anything, I just want us to be aware of it, because I can see scenarios where somebody comes in and wants to audit something, and maybe they have the right bona fide. That's a specific area where I think a lot of people, like if you're one of us, you might have a different opinion of who the really trustworthy audit organizations are. That doesn't necessarily track with what most people in this space would say the ones they've said that have heard of. So that's a special category for me. But I just wanted us to start thinking about process, and I absolutely do not want to bog us down with unnecessary process. So, like you said, that seems good. It seems like a good start. I just want to aware of it.
I think you'll also get a little bit more details when you see the RFPs as they are brought up next week. So right now they're with the original authors as kind of the template itself for the RFPs. The shell per se is kind of being refined. So some of the things that you mentioned, which are really important, came out when the SDK one was sent to Aaron for review. And certain things like you mentioned, whereby this could turn off people from submitting because it's an overcomplicated process. We've seen that. So there were some questions in there that just didn't make sense at this stage because, like you say, a lot of the people that will be applying likely are within our communities. And so they're already somewhat vetted. They're not an external party. And it was something like, can you give me the last 5 years of financial records, et cetera? It just doesn't make sense. Which is like, I don't have any because I've been in TELOS or I've been in EOS for the last 5 years.
Precisely. Yeah. I don't really have any.
So that's less relevant, or actually it is highly relevant. And so what we've done is the current process, and the RFPs will really lay that out, kind of is more lenient on that front as we're smaller. But if, like Jeff mentions, people within our communities don't bid on items, then the more stringent process would go up because it'd be truly open tendered. Now we've been getting complete unknowns to bid. The requirements in it, and you'll see that with the, I've looked at the faster finality one in greater detail. They're incredibly detailed. And so having to address every single thing, every single requirement, if you can go through that process, you are likely well capable of actually bidding for that. So that'll be some of the quality control. But ultimately, it's up to the coalition to decide whether or not a particular bid is accepted, right? So we'll end up going to vote, and then we would agree or disagree as a group, and then at that point, I guess we would determine whether or not, well, is that still enough of a priority that we want to either reduce the requirements or remove some of the features or functionalities within that particular RFP in order to maybe open it up to a few more people. I think that would be a case by case at that time. Ultimately, potentially we'd be dropping some of the priorities where we just can't find anybody to tackle that. That is, I think that's more likely.
Unless the work market, unless the job market changes a lot, which
well, and it may not be the case, right? So we'll also go back to how do we advertise it, where we advertise it. As you mentioned with the audits, it's quite specific. So the two items that were there right now weren't the audit of EOSIO. So the audit of EOSIO, we would likely need to not just do an RFP, but potentially reach out to organizations that we know, the ones that you like and the ones that we've heard of, et cetera, and then say, hey, here's an RFP. Do you want to bid? So we kind of do headhunting for that one, I think. But the two other items that Sentinel was thinking of bidding on are very specific in terms of applicability to EOSIO. So it's unlikely that a third party that's not in the EOSIO ecosystem would bid on that. And so that would likely be more internal, which then lowers the barrier to who do we think can handle that. A lot of the teams that we've been working with essentially have been doing a job interview for the last 4 years. So the likelihood that you'd say, listen, I can vouch for this team. They've done XXX product. I know them. They're not scammers. That would lower the barrier, I think, for the internals.
I fully agree. I think that we should, that a two-tier sort of discovery process seems to make sense. Just because, either the people, those are going to be people who are the authors themselves, or because they're going to be people who, a lot of us have worked with closely.
They'll be linked to one of these 4 groups at the onset, is my thinking. The talent pool out there is relatively small, but I'm thinking that the majority of these priorities at the onset anyways will be bid either internally by the people within the coalition, or at arm's length of people within the coalition or the coalition.
1 degree of separation.
Is my thinking at this stage. But I guess the ultimate goal would be to grow that circle. It would be great if in 6 months to 8 months, we actually do have a very formal open process where now we have a lot of people that can undertake this work. I think that that would be a huge win for all of us.
Yeah, we should grow that.
I just don't think we're there yet.
No, we're not. No, I agree very much. We should grow the talent pool. I think that there's a small worry about optics, people outside not really understanding this, saying, oh, they just giving work to themselves, when the reality, when our valid response would be, we'd love to give it to more people.
Exactly.
This is pretty special stuff, so that's to be expected.
And we're somewhat, I mean, the way that we do this as well right now is that everything is recorded, like this call right now, everything is then published.
Oh, shit.
So the process itself is quite transparent, right? I think within the current misfortune of the last couple of days or so, there is opportunity though, because we've actually put $2 million in a treasury that now is worth less than that if we hadn't done so a few weeks back.
Yeah.
So we actually have concrete funds that will be deployed for these items. And so people now are potentially looking for more work, right? And we've kind of secured our treasury. So I think that we're really, really well positioned to be able to, with open arms, accommodate more developers. Ideally, I think we could come out of this much stronger than we entered this, for sure. At an accelerated pace that I thought would happen due to external factors.
Well, thanks for mentioning it, man.
It's pretty crazy when you think about
No, I'm kidding. It's good that I think this, highlights the advantages of being fiscally conservative and frugal about all these things. And I'd hate to have just, put all this into, UST. But but fortunately,
I think
decisions along the way. So that's good.
We'll run through this system. So also this is kind of pilot / we're still in beta phase, right, of this process. So I think we'll also grow as a coalition in terms of the process, internal processes of how do we even review the RFPs? Who's the one that reviews a little bit more, especially when they're very, very technical? How do we then determine how each of us votes and what are we comfortable with to say, yes, I'm good with this, and then yes, I'm good with assigning this bid. A huge advantage, like I mentioned, is the fact that we're recording all of this. And so we will make mistakes. We will likely, not be certain on some things, but we're doing this in a very open, transparent manner.
Oh yeah, I completely support that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Jeff, Ted, I put you in here to discuss this kind of quality assurance and qualification of vendors for the RFP process, if that's fine for you, unless there's somebody else that would also like to join that discussion.
Fine with me. Jeff is an absolute expert at this stuff.
Yeah, you guys should see the RFP templates right now. Aaron even mentioned, like, fuck that, I might not want to fill this out. It stays as is. It's very, very, very thorough. And so it's now the exercise of removing things or lowering the barrier. So the up barrier is not a problem at all. We have room to grow for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And then we look at the criteria to actually qualify the possible vendors if we don't know them yet. So we will look at that and organize a meeting to put up some ideas and.
Well, those are questions in the RFP currently, Kersten. So for vendors that we don't know, or even for vendors that we know, there's a section of the RFP that actually goes into the company details and kind of the viability of that company and why they believe they can bid on this and how they believe they can carry this through, et cetera. So that's already captured in the RFP. It's quite extensive.
Yes. Okay, so I think we've covered most of the topics. For the next week we have this action plan updated. I will work on that with Jeff. So that's kind of have that visualization that will also remove some of the complexity from this board. Is there anything else that you would like to cover? Any detailed discussion? We've lost some people already, so we're down to 8. So I'm not sure
Quick
if we have
thing,
other topics.
Kersten, I think in the other Miro board, if you don't mind sliding to your right, going back to the new one, in Scalability Plus, you can add also trustless IBC.
Yeah,
it's in it's there. But, yeah.
Guillaume, have you? I believe you mentioned that last week. Have you made the determination whether or not you'll add that component into the faster finality bid? If you don't have an answer right now, it's okay. But I believe you mentioned that last week.
Yeah, I'm considering doing that as well. Obviously, like if we were to consider them one and the same, we also need to, I guess, like add elements to I guess like the deliverables of the trustless IBC to the faster finality, and it's already kind of almost getting there, because one of some of the latest comments by Eric have to do I mean with light clients, and typically light clients, the purpose of light clients do like trustless IBC. So I think it's up to the group. I don't mind having like two separate like proposals and two separate RFPs, or merging them all.
I think maybe there's value in having two separate ones.
Yeah,
but it just means more work on the RFP front. But it would really make it distinct, and I think it would highlight as well what the cost of one is versus the other.
Right.
Seeing as in your case, actually, this is kind of intellectual property that you guys already have built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, in either way, I'm okay with either approach. Whether we want to keep them separate or combine them, I'm fine with either.
Okay. Anything else anybody would like to add for today?
Yeah, everybody go buy a astronaut Scott Kelly space NFT on scottkellyart.com. They're pretty sweet.
Excellent.
We had a couple of great talks with him. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's an astronaut who spent a year in space. And
yeah, you mentioned that was why you had to miss one of the meetings, that you were working on something with him.
Yeah, I was actually, Erica and I were actually interviewing him, and then we did AMA yesterday, and it's pretty cool. Anyway, very, very excited. And I'm just kidding, but it's well worth a look. Anyway, thanks guys. Great meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Catch y'all later.
Go astronauts.
Thanks.
I went to space
Thanks, everyone.
when I was a kid. I loved it. It was awesome.
Nice. Me too.
You should
Thanks
listen to
all.
those things. It's really inspiring, man. So cool. Just, yeah, I had fun talking to him. All right, talk to you guys later on.
Is it scottkellyart.com? I found scottkellystudio.com.
Nope, scottkellyart.com. I'll put it in the thing real quick.
Cool.
Yeah, or I'll put it in our Telegram group.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you. All right.
Later, everyone.
Have a good one.
Bye, guys.